Hey guys, this is Ryan. Today I wanted to show you the software that we have to control, program, and monitor your Outback equipment as well as the classic charge controllers. This software does require you have at least one classic in the system in order to manipulate your Outback equipment. Software also requires an Outback AXS module, which can be purchased from your favorite distributor and needs to be connected up to the network in your house that this software is running on. The software can be used remotely, but for this video we're going to assume that it's on the same network or on the LAN, if you will. We will have a video entitled Connecting My AXS to My LAN or to my network. That can be a little bit interesting because they have made it not show up on most routers. So it has a default IP address and you have to connect to it and change that IP address if it's on a different network number, like 192.168.2 in my case is my network, and the AXS comes on .0, 192.168.0 dot something. I can't remember the actual number, but we'll have a video to walk you through that using this program to change that IP address to get the AXS connected. So for now we're going to assume that's all connected, and we're going to move on and show you what we got going on here. So the first thing you're going to have is you're going to have a menu button over here where we do basic setup, device control, and advanced setup. We have a help file, and then we have about the software. We're going to go right to the advanced settings because we're going to assume that you need to program your equipment. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. That should be about full screen for you guys. So we're going to jump right into the Outback AXS first, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the IP address in the port. The program will remember this, so as you can see mine is all set. That's my IP address that's given to my AXS, and this is the port number it's on. I'm going to click OK. We're going to check that by getting the AXS block info, which is basically just the SunSpec stuff for the AXS. You'll notice there's also an Outback AXS tab. When we go to that tab, that's where we would actually change its IP address and whatnot. So that will be covered in the video, but this is where you would set all that stuff up as well as email passwords and everything for the AXS. So now we're going to get all block fields. We're just going to get everything, and we're going to update everything. So now you can see we have a single inverter on here. We have a FX inverter, and that's because this is just my office system. There are no Outback charge controllers, there are no FNDCs, no GSs, anything. Those would all show up here as other tabs. So you would have an FNDC tabs, you would have a GS tab, so on and so forth. So we'll go to the FX config tab because that's where the meat and potatoes really is, and you'll notice that this is how we program it. So, for instance, this is the FX absorb volts, 14.4 volts. So let's go ahead and change that, and of course it's going to warn us that that could do something bad if we don't know what we're doing. And the thing you'll notice here is that the value is actually 14.4 volts, but the actual value that Outback uses is 144. Now all of these fields will have different values, and if anything here, some of them, like the charger state, if you will, is in numbers like 1, 2, and 3. And instead of putting all these definitions everywhere and cluttering it up, what they are is they're all over here in a single help file, which is an Excel spreadsheet that will give you the AXS field number. This field number is unique. There will be a field number associated of every value in the AXS. So you could say, gee, I'm not really sure what to do with field number 364. You click on this, open up the spreadsheet, you scroll down to field number 364, and it will give you all the definitions of everything you can set to it. But in this case, this one's explanatory. We want to set it for 14.5 volts. So we're going to set it for 145. They drop the decimal point. We click to write the value, and now you see it says we've successfully changed the value to 14.5. So we go ahead and close that window. It'll update the field and show us that we changed it to 14.5. And I won't go through all these, but as you can see, anything you can change on the FX inverter is here, just like it would be on the mate. The stacking, grid tie enable or disable if this was a GVFX, voltage calibration, everything is here. And you'll see there are 3 tabs for it. Basically the other ones are some simple non-writable stuff. You can see that we're searching. It's set for 12 volts. We have the port number. This is a single system. There is no hub, so it's on port 0. If there was like 4 FXs, you'd have 4 sets of FX tabs, and you'd have port 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just basically monitoring stuff. This is where we'd get our temperatures. The transformer temperature is 9 degrees C. It must be cold in my office today. It is kind of chilly in here. The capacitor temperature, the FET temperature, the AC input frequency. There's no grid hooked to this right now, so there is no frequency. So yeah, that pretty much gives you a rundown of what you got going on here. Here's some more stuff that's in there, just general monitoring stuff. You know, most stuff probably won't use, but like DC bus voltage 12.8, so on and so forth. So again, just to recap, you set the IP address in the port, and then you have to click the button here to get all fields, and then most of the stuff you're going to be changing when you're programming is going to be in the config tab. And once you're done that, you would go over and you do the classic. So what we'd do there is we'd set the IP address in port. As you can see, it's remembered my classic. And a couple things to point out here is if you've already done the monitoring side of this, because this is essentially 2 different programs. One program is set up for configuring everything, one program is set up for monitoring everything. So if you've already set all 3 classics up to monitor, you can just click this button and copy the stuff from the monitoring side of it. And then down here we'll put in our serial number. This is, you know, the classic has security, so you can't write to it unless you've unlocked it. So there's our serial number. We'll save that. And now we're going to go to get the classic data. And as you can see, this is just a rundown. It's a classic 150, software date, firmware revision, network revision, unit device ID, so on and so forth. Just general, information about the unit. This is our status. In other words, nothing we can really change, but everything that's going on in the classic at the moment. And then this is where we change settings. So now we would say, okay, what do we want to change? We want to change the output current limit. Okay, it's going to give us our warning that we may catch something on fire, so on and so forth. And we go ahead and we change its value. So let's change it to 77 amps. We'll write that to the classic. And you see it says we've successfully changed the value to 77 amps and successfully updated data to the EEPROM. We'll go ahead and click OK. And it should refresh the fields, and it did, and there's our 77 amps. So as you can see, all the stuff programming on here, the aux modes, we can pick what function it is, and again, these functions will be in a chart, or as you can see here, actually they're in drop downs on the classic, so we can pick which function we want to use, program all the parameters, and go ahead and click OK, and send it up to the classic. So that's basically how you would program your classic and your Outback equipment, through the software. So we're going to assume that's all set. We're going to close that window. Now I want to show you the basic setup. And what the basic setup is to set up the monitoring software. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put in the IP address of the classic and the port number. And then we're going to go ahead and hit test classic. And you'll notice over here all the info populated. And that's letting us know that it's physically connected to that classic at this point. And you will want to put in your serial number for another reason I'll show you in a minute. This serial number is only needed if you want to be able to make changes to the classic, and I'll show you those changes in another tab here in a little bit. But after you've done all that, if you want to rename your classic for the purpose of this monitoring software, this won't actually change the name on the classic itself, but this will change the name here. So we could say main office. And when we go back to the main screen, you'll notice that shows up there. Now, I do want to point out that if you click the test button, it will overwrite that main office because that's reading it from the classic. But this is allowing you to actually name it individually on here if you want for other reasons. You can put a longer name so it can be a little more descriptive. Different things we can do on the monitoring. We can show the input voltage, the watts, the amps out, the kilowatt hours per day, charge status, amp hours per day, the auxiliary status, time and float, and then we get down to this bottom line, and this is where we work on auxiliary equipment. So is there an Outback AXS in the system? We check the box if there is, and then we go down and work on that one, but I'll show you that in a little bit. This program will work with up to 3 classics right now, so you would click add a second classic, and as you see, another whole box pops up to allow us to populate a whole second classic, and then we can add a third classic and so on. This, for now, we're going to show it just a single classic. And then you can click if there's a Whiz Bang Junior installed, and if there is, it will display that data. So now we're going to go down and look at the Outback AXS, and again you can put in your IP address, your port number, and then you can test that connection. And as you can see over here, it found the FX inverter. It's a firmware version on the AXS. It just lets us know that it's actually talking to it. And then we tell it, see here, it won't let me check the GS because it knows there's no GS in the system. It only detected an FX. So I can check the FX inverter to show that data. And then I can also check AXS auxiliary temperature. And what this means is, what this is all about, is the AXS module actually has a temperature jack on it for a typical, Midnight Solar or Outback Power temperature sensor. So you could actually plug another temperature sensor into that and just throw it in the room with the unit, throw it outside, in a weatherproof container. It just gives you an option to monitor another temperature, if you will, for whatever purpose you want to use that for. I do not have one plugged in there, so I'm not going to go ahead and check that right now. Now we want to move down to the next field down here, which is show total watts. And what this means is, if you've got 3 classics on here, for instance, you could click this and it will add all the wattage up and show you a total wattage of the whole system. So if you had like 3 classics on a single battery, you click this, it's going to show you the total wattage so you don't have to do the math yourself. And then over here is the update time in minutes. So this is how often it will read the Outback and the Classic and report the data back. And as you can see, I've got mine set for the shortest time, 0.2 minutes. And something unique about this software is that it reads, writes if it has to, and then it disconnects. So if I've got this software running, like I frequently do on my laptop that's always on from my ham radio repeater, if I want to see this controller with my local app, I can open up my local app. It will get in between these 0.2 minute reads and it will take over. The program will just sit there happily waiting, and when I close the local app, this program will take right back off reading again. So it's kind of just kind of a help where the Classic only allows one TCP IP connection at a time. So once we're done with all that, we click OK, and you'll see it's going to go out and read these devices and it'll report the data back, and there we go. So what this is showing us, and I want to point out that this stuff has mouse overs on everything. So what this is telling us is the charge state of Classic 1, because there's only a single Classic, the actual battery voltage from the Classic, the whiz-bang junior amps from the shunt, so positive or negative, this is actually into the battery. So we're making 4.9 amps into the battery. You can see the Classic's making 7.9, but we're only putting 4.9 into the battery because of the loads. Total net amp hours and battery temperature for that Classic. Like I say, it's cold in my office. And when you get over here, we got the input voltage, the wattage of that Classic, the actual amps out. And if we had clicked the show combined wattage, there would be a watt field down here that would show up that would be combined of all the Classics. Auxiliary status, my auxiliary one is on, like it says, green is active, red is not, and I've had 0 minutes in float today. So now we'll look at the Outback, and you can see it's searching. The blue light indicates the Outback is actually on. The red light here is telling us there is no AC present, so the LED is not actually lit up, if you will, sort of like the AC light on the Mate. And down here it shows us that the Outback is set to use AC if it was there. As you see, there's 0 volts AC, and there's no warnings and there's no errors. So if you see a number here and you're like, I wonder what that means, what is 128? Oh, I got an AC backfeed. So this kind of just lets you look at the errors and the warnings real quickly without having to go to a Mate, if you will. Something I do want to point out at this point is the AXS actually plugs into the place of the Mate. So to use this, you unplug your Mate, plug your AXS in, and if you wanted to go back to the Mate, you just simply unplug the AXS and plug the Mate back in. So that's just kind of showing you the monitoring. You can size this window how you want, depending on how many Classics you got or whatever you're doing. If you check less stuff, like if we go in here and we tell it not to show so much stuff, we don't want to show the amp hours, we don't show the auxiliary, don't want to show the float time, we click OK, you'll notice the window's going to get a lot smaller, and that's going to go back out and read the Classics. There you go. So that's just kind of a rundown, if you will, on that. Now I want to show you the device control, and this is why I mentioned earlier about entering the serial number for the Classic in the basic setup. So the first thing you get is manual control of the auxiliary. Remember, we've programmed it in the advanced setup for what mode we want it to be in, and in my case it's in vent fan and it's in auto. Now I could turn the vent fan off, or I could turn it manually on, or leave it in auto. aux2 is grayed out because it's set up for Whiz-Bang Jr. So if we want to change that function, we go back to the advanced and change it. But again, like I say, I can turn the auxiliary off, and I don't know if you could hear that in the background, but my vent fan just turned off. I'll turn it back on auto, and there goes the vent fan. Now you need the serial number in order to be able to do that, obviously. And then the clear logs one is another one. The classic, all the logs in the classic can be cleared, but currently you have to go to the MNGP and go into the logs and know how to do that. So with this, you know, say I want to clear the lifetime amp hours, I just click the button. It's connecting to the classic, and it's clearing the logs as we speak. This can take a little while. The protocol that's used in the classic sometimes can take a little while. As you can see, it was successful, and then it discontinued from the main office. Because remember, I changed the name of it to main office. What you're seeing down here is an auxiliary 1 control. This is based on Whiz-Bang Jr. amps. So if the Whiz-Bang Jr. amps are greater than 25, it's going to, you know, if this is checked, it's going to turn the auxiliary on. And the reason this is in there, the biggest reason, was like in my case, I have more amperage from my solar panels and my wind turbine than my batteries want to see if everything is going at once. So what I've done is I've set up my auxiliary to run a big electric heater in waste not high, but then I also have this set up to monitor it, and if my current starts to go excessive, say greater than 100 amps into my battery bank, it will turn that heater on manually on. So what this is doing is this is looking at the amperage to turn it on for, the amperage to turn it back off at, and the delay time. And then what it does is it just puts the auxiliary status back where you had it. So like if I had it in auto for the waste not high, I check that for auto, and what this will do is when the battery current exceeds this number, it will turn that auxiliary manually on, and then when the parameters met to turn it back off are met, it will put it back in auto, so my waste not high still works. So it's just a temporary intervention to help, you know, functional use of the Whiz-Bang Jr. amps, if you will. Now we want to go down and look at the Outback control, and there's two different boxes here. There's a manual control and an auto control. The manual is pretty simple. Do we want to use AC, yes or no? So if AC is present, do we want it to charge from it, or do we want to drop it, just like you do on the Mate? The FX charger mode, do we want the charger to be off? Do we want it to be in auto mode, or do we want it to be on? In other words, if we plug the grid in, do we want it to start charging? Yes, no, or do we want it to automatically decide that? And then the FX inverter mode, we can select off, and the inverter just turned off. You can see it changed to mode 1, which is off in Outback speak. We can turn it on. Probably didn't hear it click behind me, but it just turned back on, and it's in mode 3. Or we can put it in search, and now it'll go into search mode as it says mode 2. So that's the manual controls, and then over here we have the auto controls, where you can set it up. This is sort of like HBX, if you will, but a little bit probably on steroids, kind of, if you remember HBX. So the use AC, what this will do is connect or disconnect from the AC input, and it won't automatically charge the batteries, it will just power the loads. So you could say, okay, I want my battery to go down to 12 volts, and at that point I want it to turn on the input from the utility and power my loads, but I don't want to charge the battery because electricity is expensive. I want to hope the sun comes back out tomorrow and does it. So you'd set all these parameters up for your voltage to connect, your voltage to disconnect, the delay and the hold time, and then you would go down and set up the charger. So then you could say, okay, well, if the batteries keep going down and they get down to 11.5 volts, I just want to bite the bullet and turn the battery charger on until they get back up to 13 and hold 13 for 5 minutes. So you can pretty much fully functionally program like a custom HBX mode or LBX, whatever you want to call it. This does require this software to stay running, though. That is something I want to point out. If you want to use like this aux control or this control down here, this software has to stay running on a PC all the time, which in my case is not a problem because I have a laptop that runs 24/7 for my ham radio repeater. But just some basic functionality, some cool stuff there, and then when we're all done, we just click OK, and it sits there and runs in the background, and monitors the classic. And as you can see, it puts the main information up here too, like 13.3 volts in bulk, and if we had that wattage check, that would show up. And that's so that if you minimize this and you just hover down and touch it in the taskbar, when it comes up you can actually see that without having to actually maximize it if you don't want. Now something else that's embedded in this software that I want to point out, it's not in this menu tab. It's in the, you go to your start button and find the AXS monitor file, and then you'll find this tool, which is the Modbus reader. So you put in the IP address of the Classic, you put in the port, and you put in the start register and how many values you want to read. I want to read 10 registers, and I click read, and it comes back with all this information from my Classic. And there's also a it'll take you there's a link right here to our Modbus document on Midnight Solar's website. But here's the decimal values of all of those, and then it's broken down into the most significant bit and the least significant bit of the registers here in decimal, and the same thing, most significant bit and least significant bit in hex. And then it's actually broken down into binary too, for those of you like Bob at Midnight who speaks binary. It's can be handier to see it in binary than it is any other form. So again, you just pick a register. Like I could say I want to go 4181 and I want to read 10 registers, and I click read, and bam, there it is. Just kind of a handy little tool for you, those of you developers that just want to be able to quickly check something and look at it, if you will. Well, that pretty much concludes the Outback and Classic monitoring and programming software. For any questions, feel free to give us a shout or ask on the forum, and we'll help you out with that. Thank you for watching.